What is up, Butterfly family? It is Dr. Kathleen Nash. I am a chiropractic physician who specializes in helping people with metabolic damage overcome obesity, reach a normal weight and hold it, eating 2 to 3,000 calories a day, while correcting issues like fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, and more. And in this short video, I'm going to introduce you to Jolene, a private client of mine who, for more than 2 decades, tried diet after diet, went to doctors, specialists, and weight loss centers for help with obesity, but saw little to no result. But by focusing on underlying metabolic damage, she was able to see a dramatic improvement to her body in just 10 days. So let's check out the video.
Too, because I'm like,
Nope.
oh my gosh, I'm getting such amazing results. Like results, and I think there's a saying out there, and maybe you can correct me, Dr. Nash. My husband, I think, was reminding me, he goes, it takes you like a month to notice. It takes 2 months for
Yeah.
friends, for our family to notice, and it takes 3 months for everybody else to notice. But I'm literally like at a month, on your first phase, everybody was noticing.
At a
My
month.
mother-in-law hadn't seen me for a month and she's like, "Oh my gosh."
At
Like,
at 10 days. Right. And so we're going to put the picture up and show just the 10-day result. At 10 days, you made a change that I would expect to see somebody make maybe in the first 30 days if they were being really sticking to what I was asking them to do. They were implementing all the strategies that I built into the program for them. I'd see that result in a 30-day period, but you showed it in 10 days. And in my opinion, the more important part of it, we got the 5.5 pounds in 10 days, which we're going to talk about that compared to like your previous attempts and how long you'd been trying. But the amount of weight change in the belly, 6.5 inches in 10 days in that
yeah.
belly, and it's obvious,
It
right?
looks like a 20-pound weight
It
loss
really
to
does.
the
Yeah.
eye.
Yeah. It really, really does.
And I think this is something that we should probably mention out loud, is that I'm not the typical overeater, food craver. I have been a notorious undereater for
Right.
20 years.
So you're saying that for like how long did you undereat, would you
I've been
say?
under eating the whole time. Like, even when I don't really know I'm on a diet, I was still under eating, right? So it would just be, but it would be my food choices that were
Well,
holding me
give
back.
me
Like,
give me a time frame. So when you say that you've been under eating the whole time, are you talking about since the lockdowns? Are you talking about
no, 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 we're
5?
talking like late teens. So, like, I was always a very, very skinny child, and I'm quite petite, like small bone structure. And since I've been 17, I've really struggled with my weight.
Then before coming to me, how long would you say you were trying to lose the weight or
So
get
I have been trying for 20 years. Like, I've done all the mainstream commercial diets, and even on the forums and all that stuff, I was very active, very engaged, and I would look at people that had like a lot more weight to lose than me, seeing them get results and bypassing me, and I wasn't. And I'm like, and some of them are like, "Oh my gosh, I overate today," and they were like beating themselves up for doing that, and I was always like, I never go over my amount. I never eat like I never eat. It was almost like a pride thing that I didn't eat to what I was supposed to eat at. So the under eating thing was still kind of there, but I still didn't really understand. I'm like, why am I not losing weight? Like, why are all these people that have like 100, 200 pounds to lose? And I just wanted to lose like 40, 50 pounds. And I couldn't even lose like 10 pounds on these mainstream commercial diets. To sort of a bit of an impasse with some nutritionists where they said, you're probably in, like what you said, metabolic thermogenesis. I'd been under eating for 20 years
yeah.
that my body just did not want to move at all anymore.
So it
And
sounds like you went to have you been to a few doctors about this weight issue as well? Because it sounds like it.
so, anyways, with the endocrinologist, like, he's like, you're an entrepreneur, you're just being impatient, you're used to like results. And I'm super data driven, right? And so I had gone back to the commercial diets thinking, like, okay, maybe I'm just too busy. Maybe I'm not tracking properly. Maybe I need some structure and it's easy and whatever. And so it's been since last December that I've been on a diet, major commercial diets, probably like two of them, right? Actually, three of them. I did three of them. And I did not lose a pound. In fact, I kept gaining. And then I got desperate and I went to a nutritionist. And she's like, well, I think you've been depleted for too many years. Let's try reverse dieting you. and I continued to gain reverse dieting. So my doctors are baffled, endocrinologists were baffled. I got sent to a weight loss specialist who I actually haven't seen yet. But what happened was when they prescribed the weight loss medication, I was really they had resubscribed it to try again. They're like, you just got to get over that hump of that tired feeling. And so I started Googling, going like, what does this medication do to the
Do.
body? And a YouTube video came up, and I found you, and it was like everything that you said was like spoke to me, because you're like, people are not focused, these doctors are not focused on the metabolic damage. And I knew, and that spoke to me, because I'm like, I know that there's something wrong. And I also knew that as well, because I happened to have a CT scan on my stomach, because I was ending up in the hospital like 3 times in the last year. Since all the weight gain happened, thinking like, is it IBS? Is it a kidney stone? Is it whatever? So they finally CT scanned me, and they're like, oh, you have fat deposits on your liver. And I'm like, that's impossible, because like
Wow.
I don't drink alcohol. And they're
Right.
like, well,
That's the first. Right. Well,
there's
there's one
non-alcoholic
alcoholic.
fatty liver. And they're like, and it's not even that bad. There's just a few little spots. They said it could be from the steroids you had to use when you got the virus. And they said, if your waist circumference just comes down, this is probably going to go away. But that was the problem. I couldn't get my
Right.
waist
And I remember
down.
suggesting fatty liver, and you kind of pushed back on that. And you were like, no, 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 no. They told me that it's just like a few
A few
lesions
little
on the liver.
spots.
Right. Right. Because I
Yeah.
remember that going, given your weight, given where the body's holding the weight, eh, yeah, this is potentially going on here. But I remember you pushed back on that. Like, you did not like that answer. No, 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 no. They told me that it was just fatty lesions on the liver, which, I mean, that doesn't sound much better. But
Mhm.
so one of the videos that I show online, or when someone does the evaluation, specifically talks about insulin, right? This would be an actual measurement of insulin. So one of the things that you said, well, is it just seems common sense that if I'd fasted for a long amount of time and you draw my blood and test my insulin, then my insulin's going to be low, right?
Mhm.
So this is a measure of insulin. If we look up the side, this is them actually testing the insulin. And you're right, all of these responses are what insulin does during an oral glucose tolerance test. So this would be the gold standard, is that you would
And
go
they
in.
don't do that here in
They
Canada.
don't do it in the United States either. Like,
Yeah.
it's very
They'll do it
difficult.
when you're pregnant.
Right. Yeah, which
Yeah.
is why we'll find things like gestational diabetes, is because they'll
Mhm.
do it when you're pregnant. But really, in the States, they're just doing the A1C and the blood sugar. You can push here, like you could push again to your doctor and be like, add insulin into that. Just
Yeah.
depends on if the insurance company is going to pay for it. But if we look at here, all of these patterns, the blood sugar is normal. So if all we're looking at is the blood sugar, we're not seeing this. The blood sugar is normal. And so they'll say, well, your blood sugar is normal, so you're not diabetic. Well, but you're not getting the whole picture, because you're not actually looking at insulin. Now, when we look at insulin, there's 4 patterns here, but only the blue pattern is the normal insulin response. So with these other people, we're either seeing a sharp rise immediately, and of course, the higher it goes, the longer it takes for it to come back down, and it has to be in below that green line to burn body fat.
Mm.
And it's like a light switch. It's not like a mix. It's, if I have less than 30 units of insulin in my blood, my body will allow access to body fat. But if I have 40 units of insulin in my blood, my body is not going to give access to body fat. Now I'm going to burn sugar. And these are the 2 different types of fuel that the body burns. So if I'm only testing blood sugar, or even when I'm testing insulin, but I'm only doing the insulin in that fasted state, then 75% of the time, it's going to come back with a diagnosis that I'm not diabetic, I'm not even insulin resistant, because
Mhm.
we're not doing this gold standard. So even this poor category here, the red one, these people are never getting into fat burning, ever. Yet their blood sugar is normal, right? They'd see it in the insulin test. If they tested insulin, they'd be like, wow, your insulin's overreactive. You're insulin resistant. They would call this insulin resistant. But these other people are often misdiagnosed as normal insulin sensitivity, when really, because we're not doing this test, ideally you want to do it every single hour. You would do a blood draw and test insulin. That's how you're going to find, how does insulin actually respond in the presence of carbohydrate or sugar.
Food.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was sort of my question was what is my body doing when I'm actually putting food in my body or a certain specific type of food?
Right.
Um, and yeah, so I mean, overall, it's been incredibly frustrating because, I'm the type of person that, if I was like engorging myself and eating all the crap, I'd be like, okay, it's my fault. I got to do something about this. But I feel like I've been doing something about it for 20 years.
Right. For 2
And
decades.
yeah, and my body's just fighting it was fighting back, and there was nothing I could do, and even my doctors were like, "Look, we don't even." I they sent me to a dietitian where she's like, "I don't even wanna tell you what to do because you know what to do, and everything that you're doing and what you're telling me you're doing for the food, I can't even recommend anything different from that because you're doing all the right things." So this is absolutely baffling,
Yeah.
even to the point where my dietitian had a conversation with the weight loss specialist, who I haven't seen yet. And she said, I have two other people like Jolene in the city, and it's absolutely baffling. And, she said, the only thing I can think of is there's hypothalamic scarring, which, is her body's fighting back and all this kind of stuff. So I haven't seen her yet. I just happened, I didn't want to wait because it was a
Right.
very long wait to see her. And when
Right.
I saw you come up on this, program on YouTube and you talked about this damage, like that's literally how I feel. I felt like I'm definitely somebody who isn't an overweight person because I have an eating problem.
Right.
But the way the food is responding in my body, it's not working. And I just kind of felt like, it's like a lot of people said, I'm surprised you haven't given up by now.
Yeah.
Because I literally am only in a down mode when I've done very specific type way of eating, which is like what mentioned to you earlier. I had success, along with my sister, but it was very delayed success and it
Right.
was very, very restrictive. And it's
Right.
one of those things that you do it once, you're like, I never want to do it
Do that
again.
again. Right. And then only
Yeah.
to be rewarded with hitting maybe a more acceptable number for you, or feeling like you're in a more acceptable or whatever, like you feel more comfortable in your skin, only to have the body start immediately gaining the weight back if you even step a toe out of line. Like that's, I can
Well, and
see.
that's another thing that I really do want to kind of like address here. The mindset issue is once you do kind of hit a goal weight and people start telling you you're looking good and you're at parties and food is a love language, like you can eat this, you're skinny now. You get to a point where you're looking for permission,
Yeah.
because you're just so exhausted of the whole process that you're like, yeah, I am looking good now. I can eat that. And then it's like an alcoholic. You fall off the wagon and you're just like, that tasted so good. I haven't
Right.
seen that in 9 months, like,
And
8 months, 7 months.
almost in the same situation of the depleted physique competitor, right?
Yeah.
Where you have people that just take it to such a drastic level because they're just so desperate for a result, and they're just being told the same line, as to what it's going to take to make it happen, that when they do finally get a taste of something that's high caloric density or sugar or processed carbohydrate, and you hit that dopamine in the brain, how are
Yeah.
you going to fight against all those hormones? So then that brings us into the evaluation with me. And in fact, I think you called my office and talked
I
to
did.
yeah. So
Yeah,
you
because
called
I'm like,
my,
I didn't know if you worked with Canadians. I knew
right.
you're American. So I'm like, oh, I wonder if she will work with me. I don't know if I have to go in to get tested and see her office. Like, I had no idea. So I just called.
Right. So my staff reach out to me and they're like, okay, so we have somebody that, they're going to do an evaluation with you, but like, even we're worried that we don't know if you're going to help her, because apparently when you called, you were in sort of a desperate, not a desperate state, but you were just telling them all of this information.
I'm like, I
Right.
got a lot of stuff going on here in my
Right.
body.
And so they come back to me, and of course they know a little bit about like all the processes and things, but they're not the doctor. So they're like, okay, so we made the evaluation, but I mean, like, she's telling us like doctor after doctor that she's been to and all these things that she's doing. We're not sure. So when I first heard them say that, I was like, okay, they're not really well trained in metabolic processes or things like that, and based on what they've heard before. But then when we started talking, I'll be honest, because in the beginning, I'll ask you about your health history and your diet history and where you want to go. Even I was worried. I was like, if she's already been to more than one endocrinologist, more than one specialist, they've done all this testing, dietitians, nutritionists, they can't find out what's wrong, steroid, but like, even I was nervous about using my strategies on you, right? Which is why we ultimately ended up deciding on a 10-day, right? I was like, we're going to do like a 10-day trial because now it's my reputation on there, and I don't want to make some blanket statement that I can fix all of this, or I can give you the strategies where you can fix all of this. That's a better way of saying it. And only for you to have another disappointment, right? So that was uncomfortable. I will say one of the things that I'm very thankful that happened before your 10-day period is that you did come down to the States, because one of the things that I wanted to use was the nutrition with you, was that liquid nutrition. I will tell you internationally, because I've worked with people in other countries, in other continents, where it's very, very difficult for them to get the liquid nutrition. They almost either have to have like a US address where they can get it to them. If I try to get it to them directly, it's just too expensive and it takes too long.
Mhm.
The changes that we see with people who don't have that liquid nutrition element are nowhere near the same as the people we see that do. Like, really isn't there, so one of the things that I talk about with the metabolic damage is this nutritional deficiency. And so if you think about it, somebody who's been nutritionally or calorically depleted for 20 years off and on, right? You might have had episodes where you went up, but by and large, the body's struggling with even getting enough food to eat on a daily basis for that long. Obviously, they're going to have nutritional deficiencies. So that's always a big conundrum. How do I correct nutritional deficiencies while still keeping the body in a deficit where we're going to help it target and burn off the extra body fat? So that is something I was really thankful, is that you happen to be doing for your job, coming down into the States and having like a conference or something. So we ended up actually sending the nutrition to your hotel.
Yeah.
Just get it into Canada. Sorry,
Yeah, it
Canada.
was really fast for it just happened to work out.
It really, yeah. And I was so thankful, because I'm like, I'm going to do a 10-day trial, one, because I knew all of the stuff you
It's
had
gonna
told
take a
me.
month to maybe get to my
Oh,
home.
easily,
Yeah.
easily. But I was like, well, I'm already not sure, based on everybody that you've already talked to, if the strategies haven't already been used with you before, or maybe they're not going to work. But then I was also thinking, I can't even get her on that liquid nutrition to help that part of it. We're going to have to try to go with stuff that's over the counter, which is always going to be less potent, because it can be dangerous to give the body too much nutrition, especially when it's
Yeah.
highly concentrated.
And just I think just for the record too, like when you say I was in a more restricted phase, it was actually more calories than what I was actually already doing on my own. You know what I mean? Like it's yeah, like it felt like way more food,
Oh,
way
you
more
mean when you
satiating.
started with me?
When I started with
Oh,
you,
okay, okay.
yes, it felt like more food, more satiating. I didn't feel hungry. Like it wasn't like a painful. And I mean, I've got a lot of gumption. I've done some crazy restrictive dieting for very long amounts of time. And not a lot of people can do what I do. But when with you, I was like, "Oh my gosh, anyone can do this." Like this felt easy to me because the food was really delicious. And it was like I didn't feel like I was overfed and I didn't feel underfed, because there's definitely, the bodybuilding diet for me, I'm like my mind can't even go there. It's like a mental block, cuz I'm like I'm not eating 6 meals a day. I'm not
Yeah,
prepping that much food. I was gagging the whole time that I did that program. I was gagging because I wasn't ready to eat again.
right.
It was a lot of food, but like very low calorie food, very low fat food. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, I need something easy. And I do like food. Like when I do eat, I have a palate. I want it to taste good.
Right, of
Like,
course, of course. Well, and then with me, so we do the 10 days. You were eating, so when you say like the food was really delicious, let's confirm you were buying food like from a grocery store. Like, I wasn't providing you any food, right? This is food that you were buying and that you were
yes, it
preparing.
was real food. It
Yeah, it
wasn't
was, yeah.
packaged. It
Yes.
wasn't frozen, which I was on a program like that right before I started working with you. I was on a frozen food program that was very structured, and it tasted good, but I wasn't getting any results.
Right.
And I
And in
mean,
fact, I think you sent me a message. So one of the things that I do with my private clients, right? Because I want you to be supported. So you have a way where you can actually interact with me while you're going through your program, right? If you have a question, you want to
yeah.
ask me something, you have direct contact with me all the time. So you don't
Mhm,
feel like you're doing it on your own. And if I remember correctly, like just a few days in, I'm actually looking at my phone because I have the app on my phone, where you sent me like a side by side comparison of whatever it was that you had previously done. Do
mhm.
you remember that? And it was like the calories were comparable to what you were doing
Oh,
on your
right.
do you remember that?
It was a screenshot of my Fitness Pal
Right.
because this frozen food program, I didn't really know what the food profile looked like the nutrition,
Right.
right? I knew what the calories amount was, but because I'm obsessed with data, I wanted to
Right.
know how can I sustain this after I lose the weight if this program works. So I actually put their program like every time I ate their foods, I would scan it to know exactly what it was. And I found out and I kind of knew based on what type of food it was. I'm like, geez, I'm a little afraid of this. It's really high carb and I've never really had success with carbs. And so it was pretty high carb and I wasn't getting, and it was very low fat and I wasn't getting any results until I actually had to prepare for I can't even say, how do you pronounce that? Endoscopy? Is it
Endoscopy. Yeah.
endoscopy? I had
Yeah.
to prepare for an endoscopy procedure where I had to fast and they ended up getting me in quite late. Like I was supposed to have a morning procedure. So I ended up fasting way longer than what I was supposed to. And then I was so tired and everything. I went to bed. So my fasting period was probably like a day and a half. Then I had my weigh in at the center and they're like, oh, woohoo, you lost weight. I'm like, yeah, because I starved the last 2 days.
Right.
Because they were
Right.
like, "You're not budging," and, they were concerned too because they always it wasn't the first time I had been on this program, and I told them, I'm like, "I think I'm sensitive to carbs, I'm a little worried that this isn't gonna work," but I would try because I really wanted to believe in it, and it just didn't work, so then this last round, I said, "I'm really worried again, but you know what? Something's gotta give here," so they're like, "We'll try again," and so when I actually had this, couple of pound weight loss, they were cheering and I was like, I just had to starve for 2 days.
Right. Right. Speed. Not. Yeah. Nothing against your program, but it wasn't your program that did it. It was the fact that I had to prep for an endoscopy. Right.
Exactly. And then the moment that I went back, so I was very regimented. I ate all the food that they wanted me to eat. I had to bring in the logs as well. I gained the weight back. So literally that program, I was just maintaining. I wasn't gaining, but I wasn't losing. And I had done that program for a couple of months to see zero results. Because I actually wanted to lose some weight before I went to this conference in the States.
Yeah.
Because I have to, be sometimes on stage and work, I'm in a massive group of people. So I had to do a virtual stage event where they were going to see my full body. And my client, our members were used to seeing me from, right now, like a Zoom. And in my mind, it's like, oh, they probably think I'm so tiny because I always have a thinner face. And I was very, very, very emotional about going there and looking the way I did. So that's why I started this other commercial program thinking, oh, maybe I'll lose like 20 pounds or 15 pounds before I go there. That'll make me feel a little bit better. And I think that people were pretty shocked at how I even had a colleague say, I'm very surprised, because I watch you eat, you barely eat. And there's something going on. He was like, do you have a thyroid condition? Do you have a pituitary condition? He was very gentle about the conversation because him and I kind of related. And, this conversation with him actually happened when we were in another event in Colorado back in the summer. And he's like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Cause I look pregnant. I look
Right.
pregnant all the
Right.
time.
And I remember you saying that when we had our evaluation. So again, you're in Canada, I'm in the States. So we're having the evaluation. When you popped on the screen, I'm looking at you. And the first thing I thought was, okay, she must have body dysmorphia or something. Like she's not, honestly, that was my first thought. I'm like, she's seeing something that isn't there. Right.
Mhm.
And kind of had the same conversation, I guess, that you had with my staff where you told me what you're just telling me. I eat really low, I do really all of this, and I look pregnant. And I believe I actually asked you to stand up or you offered to stand up. But either
Yeah.
way, you stood up
I'm gonna
and
stand up for you because you probably think I'm skinny.
right. Cause yeah, because you were like, do you want me to stand up and show you? And I was like, yeah, actually I do, because I don't believe you. And then when you stood up, I wish I had recorded that evaluation, because when you stood up, the look on my face completely changed. It was like, she's not lying. Like this body was completely disproportionately, really disproportionately holding on to the weight, which almost always signifies, even if you've had it for a long time and maybe you have family members that are shaped that way. So a lot of times well, my mother was shaped that way, my grandmother was shaped that way, so it's a genetic thing. Is it a genetic thing, or it's because that's how they ate that drove their body to be that way, therefore
My
that's how they taught
family's
you
all
to eat?
skinny and
Right.
tiny.
So when we see a body like that where the arms and legs, yeah, they're carrying extra weight, but relative to the stomach or the midsection is much bigger, much more distended. That almost always signifies metabolic damage, whether it's inflammation, whether it's fatty liver, whether it's insulin resistance, dietary hormone. Something is driving that body to not have the ability to access and burn its body fat properly. We'll continue this video in just 1 second, but first, this year, if it's one of your goals to burn off some extra body or belly fat, get rid of some medications that just seem to be managing you, or like Jolene, you're ready to reduce your risk of metabolic issues like fatty lesions on the liver and lose up to 10 pounds in 10 days, consider joining our next 10-day metabolic challenge called the Butterfly Blitz and see the results for yourself. This proven program focuses on supporting your metabolism and making sustainable changes to help you reach your weight loss goals. Don't miss out on our next opportunity to improve your health and feel your best. Check out butterflyblitz.com and get in on our next 10-day challenge. All right, back to the video. Now, what is also interesting, I don't know if you remember this, but I'm going to share my screen again. This was a picture that you showed me. I'll try to zoom up. I guess you
Oh,
had
I screenshotted my Renpo. I forgot
right.
about that.
So you had done a screenshot of this is where I was when I started.
Yeah.
And this is what it's been doing in the last 10 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it was just unreal. When I saw the graph, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like usually because my lines, they go so slow.
Right.
And for that to just be like, like
whoosh, like overnight, like wham, body just
yeah.
starts to drop and go. So because I saw the other one that you sent me where you did like, this is what I was doing with the previous program right before you. And was actually fairly low calorie. So the fact that your body responded this well with the 10 days, the first 10 days with me, considering you were coming right off of a really calorically restrictive program, is also good news because it means that the metabolism wasn't, because we'll see so much metabolic adaptation that even on the calorie deficit has just been for so long that the body can't respond. So the fact that your body still was responding was really, really good news, right?
And it was just interesting because when I actually plugged in your program versus the program I was coming off of, it was relatively the same calories, but the macronutrient profile was completely different.
Right.
And that where it was like mind blown because I'm like, I just did this program, this other program for a couple of months and had zero results. How is it the same calories?
Right.
Calorie in, calorie out theory is supposed to make sense. Why am I losing on Dr. Nash's diet?
Right.
The same caloric nutrition, but a completely different nutrition profile.
Right. And not
Like
just
that,
water.
that was what was really mind boggling to me when I actually compared them.
Right. And a lot of times people will be like, well, because, when you change the macronutrient profile, you're going to see a lot of water weight, which is true. You always see a lot of water weight when you begin any kind of
I
diet.
never had the water weight losses though. For me, like that was always frustrating because they're like, oh, your first week is always the best week. I never, ever got that on any program ever.
Right. Yet in the first 10 days, just not even your scale weight, like that's not the most impressive to me. What was most impressive to me was the inch loss in the stomach. What was the inch loss in the stomach in a week and a half?
6.5 inches.
6.5 inches. Like remarkable, to the point that I'll show that picture to other people. And, of course, because you're a marketer, you know how to create graphics. Like you've made it all pretty for me. I was like, this is great. I don't have to do anything. But I'll cover up that bottom section and ask people objectively, look at this person and see, first of all, what's the time frame you think that it is? And then how much weight do you think they've lost? And then once they give me those answers and I drop my hand away, it's usually an expletive. Like, oh, how does she do? How did that happen? And I'm like, this is when you go after that metabolic damage on top of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's pretty unreal. Like I shared that picture with my family, my friends, because That's something that guess for me I like to do because if it can inspire some other people that have the same problem I have, or even just staying accountable. I mean, as much as I'm embarrassed to show myself because I'm not anywhere near where I want to be, it's not like it's like the crazy before picture and you're like ready for
Right,
stage performance picture. I'm
right,
not there yet. But the people that I feel really comfortable with, it is like I feel very proud, like very proud that like and not just proud, the hope. Because I'm like,
right.
nothing was working. I finally like everyone's like, it seems like you've cracked the code or you found somebody that could crack the code. Like you've been through, we know what you've been through, Joe. Like you've tried everything, you've had all these doctors, like you've known your whole day. You're like, something's wrong, something is wrong, something is wrong. And they're like, you're right, something was wrong.